Hello, everyone. Come on in. Welcome to Musing. Music for the adventurous listener, heard right here on CJSW 90.9 FM in Calgary and on all major podcast platforms. My name is Janna Sailor. Thank you so much for joining me for this hour of music and conversation. Today on the show, I am joined by the Edmonton-based ensemble UltraViolet. Founded in 2013, UltraViolet was created as an ensemble for New Music Edmonton's yearly festival, Now Hear This. UltraViolet's members bring an immense wealth of experience to performing new music individually and collaboratively, and to date, the ensemble has premiered over 40 works. Comprising of pianist Roger Admiral, percussionist Mark Segger, flautist Chenoa Anderson, and saxophonist Allison Balcetis, UltraViolet's musicians are forward-thinking, virtuosic, and dedicated. UltraViolet is named in honor of the work and enterprising spirit of composer Violet Archer, whose impact on the Canadian and Alberta music scene is still felt today. Let's listen in. So today I am welcoming the members of UltraViolet to Musing. Thank you so much for being with me today in conversation. Much appreciation for making the time in your busy performing schedules. So for folks that have not yet encountered UltraViolet, Chenoa, can you tell us a bit about the concept and purpose of the group?
We're the only group in Edmonton that specializes in the performance and commissioning of new works. And the ensemble started actually as a very loose collective as part of New Music Edmonton's Now Hear This festival. So some iterations were like a 10-person ensemble, just generated to fill the needs of open calls for scores for the festival. And then as we continued with that, we kind of whittled down to this core group of people who are really interested in continuing and becoming its own group. And so we became a quartet, and originally we featured cello in place of percussion, and then Mark joined the group in 2018, was it Mark? 2019?
I think it was 2020, but I will certainly double check that.
And Roger, you had some things to add to that.
It's not an entirely unique instrumentation. There is at least two other groups in the world But we have a nice balance of winds and percussion, the flutes and saxophones within them go from very high register to very low register because they play multiple instruments. Keyboard offers polyphonic instrument, percussion offers non-pitched resources. So we have a variety of colors that are available to us.
Mm-hmm. So, Allison, what are some of the major tenets that you take into consideration when you program?
We're all pretty much exclusively interested in working with living composers, primarily due to sort of the enriching partnerships that allow us Canadian living composers, and due to the wealth of composers in our city alone, in Edmonton. A lot of them have been Edmontonian composers, and maybe once we burn through all of them, we'll start looking elsewhere. But it's been largely people that have come through Edmonton in some way or another, but not entirely.
So, a lot of the group's work relies on that direct composer ensemble relationship and collaboration. Mark, can you maybe elaborate on what a successful collaboration between an ensemble and a composer looks like?
Sure. I think it's different for every composer, or it has been different for every composer with this group. Some composers will be there in workshops with us, multiple workshops, and talk through ideas and be writing while we are rehearsing. And then sometimes we'll get together with composers for a workshop and just go through a finished composition and do any tweaks that are necessary. But I think a successful collaboration for me and all the composers we've worked with have done this is really writing for us as people as much as instrumentalists. That's something I appreciate in general, and I think in this group also we're all improvisers as well, and so that factors into what composers are able to write for us. So I think, yeah, successful collaboration is pretty open from our end and has taken on various forms.
A bit more about, and anyone feel free to jump in, about this aspect of improvisation that you incorporate into your group dynamic, and within compositions you're collaborating with the composer. How do you go about addressing that element in their work? Are they open to having an improvised or controlled improvised section, or is that something you request from them? Just, I'd love to hear more about that, because not very many ensembles are able to do group improv, and I'd love to hear more about your strategies around that.
Well, one thing in our favor is that three of us play together in a free improv sextet apart from UltraViolet. So we already have an excellent working relationship and understanding, I think, of the ways we approach improvisation. And as for composers and working it into pieces, that's kind of where the workshop process comes in quite handy, because composers take really different approaches to incorporating improvisation. And actually, our upcoming concert on September 6th has a number of different kinds of examples of this. We have a video score by Olivia Short. So it's improv, but structured within the frame and especially time frame of a video score. Mary Alice Conrad has created a beautiful handmade graphic score on handmade paper, which we'll be playing. Lena Alameno, who is also known as a jazz trumpeter, has incorporated sections of improvisation, so more in a jazz kind of format. So I think composers can feel pretty comfortable writing whatever they want for us. We're very open to the collaboration, and the more we can talk, the more back and forth with the composers, I think the more free everybody feels.
Yes, I'd love to talk more about this upcoming concert that Edmonton audiences can take in on September 6th, so coming up quickly. It features the work of Roxanne Nesbitt, Mary Alice Conrad, Olivia Short, as you mentioned, those two, Mark Segger, and Lena Alamano. Tell me about the concept of this season launch concert and how you went about selecting the composers for it. Maybe I'll toss that to Roger.
Well, as normally is done, we start with composers that we know. We wanted to have a variety of styles, including people that we had worked with. And this was put together from two different commissioning grants, but we did have choice as to who's going to go where, and we have future concerts where other composers' works will go. We did want to explore the variety of styles these people offer, which includes improvisatory element. You could say all composers think outside the box just by choosing to become a composer. The 5 pieces offer a huge variety of timbral possibilities, which we always appreciate, which is also important for contemporary music concerts. String quartet, for example, is a beautiful medium, but it's always going to sound like 4 string instruments, unless you start to use, a variety of mutes and a variety of harmonics, which of course then composers started to do. We do that ourselves, going back to what I was saying about different wind instruments that can be used. I'm muting the piano. I have ceramic bowls inside the piano. Mark is master of 100 instruments. So the 5 composers themselves offered the opportunity to have this timbral diversity.
Mark, you are one of the featured composers on this program. What is it like
Yeah.
to write for yourself and your ensemble?
It's a real treat. I'm really excited about it, especially with this group of improvisers who I know so well. One of the first people that I improvised with when I moved back to Edmonton was Roger, and then soon after improvised with Chenoa and Allison, and we joined this quartet. So there's been a long kind of history of playing together and also just seeing what people come up with sound-wise and what people like to play. And so this piece, the approach that I took was to workshop some of people's favorite kind of areas to improvise in and sounds to play, things that we might gravitate towards in improvisation, and working that into the piece, which the general idea is a great many ways of activating a room, just one after another, and then some more lengthy improvisational spaces, and then some really quick moving back and forth. So yeah, I can't really think of a better group to do something like that for. And coming from a jazz background years ago and still doing that, but leading a group where I'm writing in a jazz style with free improvisation and then writing more contemporary classical the last few years, to be able to combine those two with this group is really, really awesome.
What is the audience response that these combination of improvised works and newly composed works, what is the response that you get from these approaches to music making?
I feel like we've actually developed a small but loyal audience, and they trust us in our concerts to play something that they will enjoy. So I don't think people necessarily come for a specific composer or program. I think they come to hear the group, and we generally get a very warm response, which is lovely. It's such a wonderful community here in Edmonton, and very welcoming for contemporary arts and for interdisciplinary arts in particular.
Allison, so UltraViolet has a commitment to gender parity in your programming, and how important is that in this current day and age, and politically, socially, but also to the mission of UltraViolet?
I mean, as I'm thinking about it right now, it does have something to do with maybe the reason why we even named ourselves UltraViolet. It is in honor of the composer Violet Archer, who taught composition at the University of Alberta and encouraged her students that if they wanted to get their pieces played, they ought to just go out and make their own concerts and kind of produce their own concerts. And that is ultimately how New Music Edmonton was founded about 40 years ago at this point. And then as we are sort of an outgrowth of New Music Edmonton, we originally wanted to keep that spirit and that theme of her initial impetus alive. And so we have her as a patron saint of our group. But then as well, it's this effort in not going to the most obvious choices, maybe, or the easiest choices of composers or pieces that we might have wanted to play. I mean, certainly in this group, we're mostly commissioning. So it's actually been pretty easy. And all it has taken is just some consideration. And we come up with these amazing partnerships with people. And it's been really fruitful. And I think we're just saying out loud that we do it, but it's not a heavy weight to carry. And we're just hoping, by virtue of having this little blurb on our website, we're hoping that maybe other people might notice and keep that consideration in their mind too. That's about it. It's like, there's not too much more than that. You can see it in our programming. That's about it. It's been lovely, but also easy.
And that's so refreshing to hear that. What advice would you have for presenters or ensembles that say, it'd be nice to include more women and minorities in our programming, but it's just too difficult? Like, what kinds of advice or what kind of resources would you point them towards? And could you maybe expand on the importance of it?
I'm a big fan of cold Googling. I browse Babbel scores, for example, as a resource for composer ideas. On social media, anytime I come across a composer, I'm clicking on their website link. I go to their website. So those are super valuable resources for me. Any other ensemble around promoting their concerts, when they have a composer listing, I'm off on those composers' websites seeing what's up. And so I guess I'm using social media and internet and browsing the large, vast libraries like CMCs, like Babbel scores. And that's how I do it. It's kind of like fishing. I'm in browsing mode, I'm in fishing mode, I'm just seeing what's around. Yeah.
I think also, like what Allison just suggested, one can easily find out just what are other people performing, what other composers have had recent opportunities, Canadian or internationally, and that it's not really that difficult. I do think we have to get away from using the word quotas, and we just want to offer opportunity to as many people as possible, recognizing that it's definitely one-sided for, few hundred years. So I agree, it's not actually a difficult situation, and you can find so much out there. I used to be in a group called the Hammerhead Consort, so we were active 1990, 91, for example. So I just compare that. So that's a 2-piano, 2-percussion group. I just compare that to similar groups that exist now and how difficult it was for us to find out anything. This is, pre-World Wide Web.
All the resources that Allison and Roger have named, totally. It is so easy to find information now online. Another resource that I really appreciate in this city is having several universities with composition programs, and we've done readings at U of A and McEwen, and it's a great way to see who's coming up through the ranks, like who the next composers are. And Roxanne Nesbitt actually is kind of an example of that, because she was a former U of A student. This is our second collaboration with her. So kind of developing these long relationships and also, encouraging the next generations of composers is really meaningful for us.
I also wanted to say, lately we've been casting a pretty wide net. I've been personally really interested in music makers who might not identify themselves as capital C composers in this traditional way. Lena Alamano being one example, because she just announced that this piece that she wrote for UltraViolet is the first time that she's written a piece for another group to play that she isn't a performer in herself. We have an upcoming commission with another musician who isn't maybe a traditional composer, capital capital C composer as well. So I'm interested, and I think probably the group is too, in people who make music in really interesting creative ways, and asking them to write for us and seeing what happens, even if they aren't like, the traditional notation kinds of people, sort of throwing them a challenge that might be out of the norm for them, but we know through their performance and through their output that they're capable of some really great ideas. So it's kind of a fun challenge that we've recently, starting on September 6th, have started taking on now for a couple concerts into the future.
I think that's a really cool thing that can come out of, a beautiful composer ensemble relationship and the safety that is created and trust within that. I love that. And these ongoing relationships and essentially, growing up with the composer hand in hand with the ensemble. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. So UltraViolet was formed in, I believe it was 2013. So that's quite a long running ensemble. And what are some of the strategies to your success and longevity? Anyone can jump in on that.
It has to start with everyone has an interest in contemporary music. I've been in other groups where I and another individual applied for a grant. The grant was successful, put on a new music concert, and then we hired a variety of people. But each time it's more or less different group of people. So they're basically playing the concert, with enthusiasm and professionally. But if they're not hungry to do it, it's not in their heart that they just really want to play contemporary music. As soon as you have a group where everyone has the same purpose, everything else just flows from it naturally.
I think it also really helps to like people both personally and professionally that you're working with, because it builds a level of trust that you don't necessarily achieve in other professional situations. And this is just such a great group of people to work with. We enjoy our time together and our artistic results.
What are some, I don't know, strategies or advice that you'd have for folks that are perhaps just wading into starting their own ensemble, or perhaps, working to maintain their ensemble quality output? Mark, do you want to dive in on that?
Finding ways to keep the momentum going is important. So joining this collective, and I just looked it up, actually it was 2022, and it seems like it was 2018 because we've done so many things and it's been so awesome. But it was quite recent that I joined the group, and I hit the ground running because it was such excellently maintained and inspiring group. I'd been going to their concerts for years, and so maybe starting a new group and using UltraViolet as an example is not what I could talk about, but starting a group in general, having started my own groups in the past, I think that just having at least goalposts coming up, a couple concerts, thinking in advance and getting dates on the calendar and concerts happening. What I was going to say about UltraViolet is that there's all the other grants we're able to be supported by arts councils for commissioning composers and playing concerts, and so it is amazing to be able to do that. And so new ensembles starting out, I think the challenge is to get to the point where you're able to remunerate yourself for playing concerts and to be able to hire composers and be able to rent venues and stuff like that. So I think, everybody being on the same page about how that's all going to work in the beginning, I think is really important. If everybody is doing a lot of things pro bono at the beginning because they love the music, and that's the way I think these things all start, and continue to love the music, and then also are able to spend more time on it because you can let other things slide that you don't enjoy quite as much as the ensemble.
Make it sustainable for the individual as well as the group. And so you have your season launch coming up very quickly. What's next for UltraViolet and the big picture and in the season ahead?
Yeah, so we don't have ongoing funding. We aren't a nonprofit and don't have operating funding. So we're usually working project to project, but a year and a half to 2 years in advance, because these projects take a long time and composers can't write a piece in 2 days. So our next funded project, Allison already alluded to it, we have commissions from Andre Telpash and Raylene Campbell. And that will actually be on a New Music Edmonton season concert in the 2026-27 season. So in late fall 2026.
So what do you hope that audiences take away from experience UltraViolet's music, whether that be in person at a performance or through listening to your recordings? Maybe I'll throw that to Allison. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I think, the fact we're a band who doesn't compose their own music, so we're playing always works by different people. And so we have a lot of different voices coming through us, unlike a band that writes their own music. So I think what we do is bring, a variety of kinds of sounds, well and intimately communicated. And certainly I think that intimacy is best felt in a live concert. And vibrancy, the excitement of usually being the first people to hear whatever it is that we're performing. We don't often play things more than once, probably never. We play things more than once. And it's usually the first, it's usually a world premiere. So there's sort of a sense of ephemerality. This is it. This is the time. And usually the composer's there in the room. So there's the excitement of like, that person, that came from them, that sound, these sounds. And we're all very eager kind of chameleons chameleons, trying to best morph ourselves into however these composers have written. And that's not to say that we like have no agency. I think what we're really interested in are composers who really write with deep knowledge about our instruments and maybe avoid cliches and really stretching us in terms of how we can connect and lock together as a group, or how we can, convey really abstract ideas. Like one upcoming idea, I was thinking about this September 6th concert. Mary Alice Conrad had us all, like months and months ago, give her sort of like scenes and memories from our childhoods about where we felt safe playing, where we played and where we felt safe, and what was, kind of like a sensory breakdown. And so her piece is like imbued with each of our childhood memories and senses of play. And it's such a heartwarming and loving kind of idea to start from. And so that's just like one example of, that where it can take your brain if you sort of sit in the room and listen to these performances. Olivia Short's, for example, the video score is about a very particular dental procedure that Olivia went through, so like we're truly spanning a huge gamut. And you think like, wow, people are fascinating. Maybe you come from our concerts with that conclusion.
With a new appreciation for humanity and all the ways that we can express it. Well, thank you so much, Roger, Mark, Chenoa, and Allison, for being my guests today on Musing. I think that's a wonderful place to leave it. And Edmonton audiences, make sure to check out UltraViolet in concert on September 6th. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Janna.
Thank you.
This has been Musing on CJSW 90.9 FM in Calgary. I'm your host, Janna Sailor. Thank you so much for joining me for this celebration of music, creators, and ideas. Musing is a production of the Canadian Music Centre Prairie Region and is heard right here in Calgary and on all major podcast platforms. As we end our time together, we recognize that there are more than 630 First Nations communities across the lands that we now know of as Canada, representing 50 distinct nations and Indigenous languages. In addition, there are Métis in every province of the country and 53 Inuit communities speaking different dialects of Inuktitut across the north. We acknowledge them as the original music makers, dancers, creators, and caretakers of our lands, and they continue to inspire and teach us as we commit to learning and moving forward together. Until next time, thanks for listening and for supporting Canadian music and artists in your community. I will leave you with more music of UltraViolet. Until next time, take care and keep listening.
Thank you.